I use a template to get the angles correct on it. In using these, you have to caution the kids that this is not a knife, so you don't push down on it. The weight of the knife blade itself is enough to do the cutting. The other end, now I've cut a little triangle off of the piece, and that piece gets glued back on there like that. Now this will set up in about 20 minutes, but it will continue to cure for 24 hours. And that piece goes on there like that. These pins have a shoulder built into them. They're a thin pin and they work really well. When you put it in, it holds the wood down without having to put a hole in it. And if you pin balsa wood, if I were to put a pin in a piece of balsa wood, it would really weaken it, and we don't want any more breakage than we have to have. I'll put a little notch in the top of that. This is dried enough now so that I can handle it. I can't put much pressure on it, or it will it'll come apart. But and I can do a little bit of sanding to smooth it up. And that's a pretty important joint, so I go out of my way to try to make sure that it gets glued well there to strengthen that joint. So an easy way to do it is to put a pencil mark on it and cut it. And if you put a piece of balsa wood down with 3 pins like that, you'll hold it in position. It won't slide around, and then it'll stay for what you want. It's fairly easy to get that angle in it. And you can slide the wood like that there. Cut 2 pieces at a time. Cut one and use it to measure and to cut the other one. You want a pretty good gob of glue, and you want to get it on there like that. It'd be nice if that part was turned over right side up. Okay, now those are those 2 pieces. Now I've marked on the drawing, leave an 1/8 inch wide space, leave it open. I would assume that you would realize that if you're going to do that, you don't want to glue these spacers in, but I've had to cut a few of them out because I know I had to be glued in there, so I glued it in. Do not glue the covering to that piece and then I put TYP or typical. That means if you don't glue it to that, you don't glue it to that one either. If you glue the covering to that, it cuts down a little bit on the airfoil that you'll get. A couple of spacers. That's one of the big advantages of the glue that I use over the CA, is that it doesn't set up right away. It's very easy to put these things on, and where I left that little bit of wood sticking out there, you can sand that off after the glue is dry, and it works out very well. Now it'll save some sanding at the end, outside of this, if you take a piece of wood like this and kind of scrape off the excess cement. This is the time that you go around and check all the joints. This is Gusset C, and I need a couple of those for right in there. Go back over it. Now we've jumped to a set of rudder, stabilizer, and wing that I had built before, so the glue is dry on these. You can sand these parts, but if you're going to sand them, you've got to hold on to the part right alongside of where you're sanding. We go around the wood twice, and I normally have them put this down on a piece of newspaper so that they don't break apart, but I'm doing this carefully, I hope. And I put that right like that. We try not to preach to them, but the first side they trim right close to the wood. Now we use a piece of wood and lay it up against the part as a guide for the knife. Now the bottom edge, where it gets glued onto the motor stick, we only want a single layer of covering, so I'm going to cut that one right next to the wood. That's when I violate one of my rules and put that pin through that wood. When they cover this, make sure that they go all the way around with the glue on the outside, and then glue the covering to these two center pieces. And I cut that part out because I want a wood-to-wood joint where the pylons hold it. I want to cut part way through that glue joint without cutting the covering, or without cutting it all the way through. And that is the front. This gets gently broken like that. Now the trim tab goes on this wingtip, and you get more winds on these things if you stretch the rubber band out. And this is a one-way thing, you can't wind it the wrong way. The combination of the way this thing, the pylon, holds onto the stick, and those rubber bands will keep it from moving when it's flying. You want to adjust the weight and balance so that the airplane is climbing but not stalling. If it stalls, it goes up like that and drops and loses a lot of altitude. So you want it to climb in a steady climb, and it takes some fine adjustment. The last two sessions of our school program, one of the sessions I let them experiment with seeing how long they can make the airplane fly. And when they get that adjusted, I tell them to put a pencil mark on the motor stick so that if it does move, they can see it and put it back where it should be.